Welcome back. In this lesson, we are going to focus on VLANs in a multi-switched environment. When there is multi-switch involved in VLAN, there must be a way for all of the different VLANs to go through these switches and get to their destination. And one of those things that is needed is called a trunk. You can imagine a trunk is like the trunk of a car. Let's say, for example, you and your friend wants to go to Kuala Lumpur from Johor Bahru. Your friend has a car and you guys are going to go to KL in his car. In the trunk, you put your boxes and his boxes. But all of the boxes looks the same. How do you know which box belongs to whom? In this trunk, where you can carry multiple boxes owned by different people, these boxes, you tag them, you give them a tag. This is yours, and that's your friend. Tags can be like a sticker where you write your name on it, or it could be like colorful stickers like blue is yours and green is your friend's. And this trunk of a car then will carry these different boxes owned by the different VLANs, the different users, towards the destination. So let's look at trunks for a little bit. A trunk is a point-to-point link between two network devices. Cisco trunk functions like this. It allows more than one VLAN, meaning that a trunk can carry more than one VLAN. Extend the VLAN across entire network. By default, trunks supports all VLANs. It also supports the 802.1q trunking protocol. So here, when we have a connection between different switches, in between these switches, you have to have a trunk. Now, trunk here works like you want to carry the boxes from these owners, VLAN 10, VLAN 20, VLAN 30. The trunk will carry these different boxes to the destination, and then the label or the tags will tell them this box is going here. This other box is going to VLAN 20, and this one belongs to VLAN 30. So trunking here is a way to carry these different VLANs boxes or packets across multiple switches. A VLAN trunk is a point-to-point link that carries more than one VLAN. So here, point to point, and this is a trunk, okay? A trunk usually established between switches to support intra-VLAN communication. A VLAN trunk or trunk ports are not associated to any VLAN, meaning that any VLANs can go through or on the trunk. Cisco IOS supports the IEEE 802.1q, a popular VLAN trunk protocol. Okay, so again, looking at this topology, VLAN trunks here are configured to support VLAN 10, 20, 30, and the native VLAN, VLAN 99. So these different VLANs can traverse the trunk to go to their destination and the way back again. Without VLANs, all devices connected to the switches will receive all unicast, multicast, and broadcast traffic. When this PC, for example, broadcasts something, it will be broadcasted to everyone. With VLANs, unicast, multicast, and broadcast traffic is confined to a VLAN. Without a layer 3 device to connect the VLANs, devices in different VLANs cannot communicate. If a switch port receives a broadcast frame, it forwards it out all ports except the originating port. Eventually, the entire network receives the broadcast because the network is one broadcast domain. VLANs can be used to limit the reach of broadcast frames because each VLAN is a broadcast domain. VLANs help control the reach of broadcast frames and their impact in the network. In this figure, PC1, which is on VLAN 10, sends a broadcast frame. Trunk links between S2 and S1 and S1 and S3, these two trunk links, propagate the broadcast to other devices in VLAN 10, meaning that when this PC, which is in VLAN 10, sends a broadcast, the only other device that gets the broadcast is this one. This PC, PC5 and PC2, which are in a different VLAN, do not get the broadcast. Only devices in the same VLAN receive the broadcast. Therefore, PC4 would receive the broadcast. Now let's look at tagging Ethernet frames for VLAN identification. Again, going back to our analogy of the boxes, your boxes and your friend's boxes in the trunk of a car, there is a need to label them, to tag them. So let's look at the tag. Before a frame is forwarded across a trunk link, it must be tagged with its VLAN information. Frame tagging is the process of adding a VLAN identification header to the frame. It is used to properly transmit multiple VLAN frames through a trunk link. IEEE 802.1q is a very popular VLAN trunking protocol that defines the structure of the tagging header added to the frame. So this part here, this is the tag that is inserted in the normal information. And this tag will carry information about the VLAN packet that is being sent through the trunk. And these are the things that is identified by the IEEE 802.1q protocol. Let's look at the tag a little bit more. The IEEE 802.1q header is 4 bytes. So 2 bytes of it will be a type, 3 bits will be for priority, 1 bit for the CFI, and 12 bits for the VLAN ID. When the tag is created, the FCS, or the frame check sequence, must be recalculated. This is the original one, and it would have its own frame check sequence number. But once you insert the tag into it, you have to recalculate the FCS to ensure that when it gets to the destination, it is the correct one and has not been altered in any way. When sent to end devices, this tag must be removed and the FCS recalculated back to its original number. The type here is a 2-byte field. This is referred to as the Tag Protocol ID, or TPID. Then we have the user priority. And then we have the CFI, or the Canonical Format Identifier. This is a 1-bit value that can support token ring frames on Ethernet. VLAN ID, of course, is a 12-bit VLAN identifier that can support up to 4096 VLANs, meaning if there are 4 different VLANs traveling in that trunk, VLAN 10, 20, 30, 40, this is where the VLAN ID comes in for them to identify which VLAN is it. Switches add VLAN tagging information after the source MAC address field. The fields in the 802.1q VLAN tag includes VLAN ID, as we have just mentioned. Trunk links add the tag information before sending the frame and then remove the tags before forwarding frames through the non-trunk ports. Let's look at native VLANs and 802.1q tagging. In 802.1q trunk protocol, tagging is typically done on all VLANs. The use of a native VLAN was designed for legacy use, like the hub in the example, like this hub here. Unless changed, VLAN 1 is the native VLAN. Both ends of a trunk link must be configured with the same native VLAN, although each trunk is configured separately, so there is a possibility that some of them would have different native VLANs on separate trunks. When you are sending control traffic sent on the native VLAN should not be tagged. Frames received untagged remain untagged and are placed in the native VLAN when forwarded. If there are no ports associated to the native VLAN and no other trunk links, an untagged frame is dropped. If there are no ports associated to the native VLAN and no other trunk links, an untagged frame is dropped. It's sort of like a rogue frame. It doesn't have anywhere to go. It will be dropped. When configuring a Cisco port on a Cisco switch, Configure devices so that they do not send tagged frames on a native VLAN. In Cisco switches, the native VLAN is VLAN by default, but of course, you can configure it differently. In voice VLAN, an access port connecting to the Cisco IP phone can be configured to use two separate VLANs. For example, here. This port over here is configured for two separate VLAN. One is for this data VLAN of this PC, and the other one is for the voice VLAN. The link between the switch and the IP phones behave like a trunk to carry traffic from both VLANs. Cisco iPhone contains an integrated 3-port switch dedicated to these devices. Port 1 connects to the switch or other VoIP device. Port 2 is an internal interface that carries the IP phone traffic. And port 3 is an access port that connects to a PC or other device. The VoIP phone is a 3-port switch. The switch will use CDP to inform the phone of the voice VLAN. The phone will tag its own traffic, which is voice traffic, and can set cost of service. Cost of service is the QoS or quality of service for layer 2. This is an example to verify voice VLAN. The show interface fast Ethernet 0/18 switch port, this command here, can show us both the data and voice VLAN assigned to that interface. As can be seen here, the name of the interface is fast Ethernet 0/18, okay, and access mode VLAN, which is VLAN 20, and the name is student, which is the name of the VLAN. And then you have voice VLAN, which is 150, and the name is voice. So in this interface, there are two VLANs assigned. So that is the VLAN in a multi-switch environment. As we go on, we will look at how different VLANs work and how we can configure and troubleshoot these VLANs. Until then, goodbye.